There we go. We're rolling on videos for our videos.
Rolling.
I mean, we gotta. We can reintroduce ourselves. Allow us to reintroduce ourselves. We are Three Crafty Bastards. Of course, I'm B. Smith. Over to my right, Mr. Classic, right?
Mr. Classic.
And we're gonna bring you a second segment because if you know anything about us, we do half-hour videos on YouTube or what's supposed to be half-hour videos. That sometimes turn into 40-minute videos or part 2 videos. Go and watch them. Check us out on YouTube, Three Crafty Bastards. Tons of videos. I'm kind of behind on uploading, but there's plenty of eye candy there for you to see. For obvious reasons, we're doing video in black and white tonight, so that's not even a gimmick, man. That's our stand. That's the stand. Video in black and white tonight. But
that's the issue of our country right now.
That's always going to be the issue of our country.
Well, it always is, but it's never. I don't know if I shouldn't say it's never, but in our time, has it been more louder?
In our time, no, it hasn't.
Because we'd have to go back to the 60s and 70s to get the volume of justice being sought. We've had issues, and now I think we're being heard. And I say that's not blacks and African Americans, minorities. That's everyone's being heard, and I think that there's a lot more compassion across the country. But there's why is there fighting? Like there's what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong.
Certainly.
Why are we not all on the side of right?
Right.
That's the problem that we're having in our country.
Well, I mean, essentially, you can't have heroes without villains, right? Unfortunately.
That is a sad statement, but that is so true. That
right.
is so sad. If you
it's
in order to have heroes, you have to have villains.
Yep.
Wow.
So, what do you got for us tonight, man?
Knowing that I'm the sports nut here, there is a lot going on in sports with getting back to trickling back into what's normal for sports. This is obviously it's baseball season. In another month, you would have NFL reporting. There's basketball going on. College campuses are starting to report back, but there's just a few items taking up the headlines for me that are getting in the way of that, and it's sort of hard to put into words, only because I don't like to be the controversial type. I have strong opinions, but I don't like to be the controversial type. That makes hardly no sense. But starting with Vic Fangio, head coach of Tampa Bay. No, I'm sorry, Denver. Denver head coach had a statement that he did not see any racism in the NFL, or he basically downplayed all of the external protests and things going on with the George Floyd protests. He basically downplayed it, said there's nothing going on in the NFL. I don't see anything. And first thing I thought of when I heard that, and I mentioned it earlier, was Mike Ditka. And I could swear it was like between 2015 and 2017, because I could swear it was around the Colin Kaepernick time. And I was so pissed at Ditka for that, because I'm a diehard Bears fan. Up to that point, I loved Mike Ditka. But after that point, there was no apology or any rectification. He just sounded like an old white male who was not affected by racism, which there's a lot of well-to-do older white males, let's say 60 and up, because I'm pretty sure he's in his 70s maybe. Anyway, it's just unfortunate that they downplay a serious, urgent issue for blacks and black Americans, because they make up, I don't know, 85%. Is that generous? A generous amount for the NFL? They make up 85% of the NFL.
I would say that's pretty accurate,
because it's quite a bit. 85%, maybe a little bit high. Let's take that down to 75%, because there are a lot of white, Hispanic, even Asian players. So NBA is different. NBA is probably the 85 to 90%. Anyway, it really showed a lack of compassion for what your employees, your family, your brothers in arms are going through on a daily basis. Of when they leave the field, when they leave the locker room, when they go home, they are members of the community, citizens of society, and to just be insensitive to what their plight might be when they leave your facility, that's hurtful. And Vic Fangio with his comments were like, I don't see it. It doesn't exist. And anyone who's been alive for the last 400 years knows that there's an inequality difference, not only in society, but it's also in sports, because you had to integrate sports with Jackie Robinson, integrate hockey with Pokey Reese. I don't know who the first black NFL player was, but I'm sure there was somebody had it. But we have to integrate these sports. When if everyone was equal, we wouldn't have these milestones, these anniversary dates of when, hey, we integrated hockey, we integrated the first black tennis player, or the first Wilma Rudolph.
Right.
Talk about all these historic black athletes who were game changers, who broke barriers that were I don't know, they were just tough to break through for decades. And unfortunately, we still have some of that today. So Vic Fangio's comments were very hurtful. A lot of players and coaches and other people kind of jumped down his throat. And I believe yesterday he issued an apology for being insensitive. As soon as he launches the apology for being insensitive, future Hall of Famer New Orleans quarterback Drew Brees lines it up and nailed it with his reminiscent comments from 2016 during when Colin Kaepernick knelt, and he was like, anyone who kneels during the national anthem disrespects the flag, disrespects soldiers. My grandfather's soldiers, and I tear up whenever I think of the anthem. I put my hand across my heart. And he said that in 2016. He just said it a couple days ago. He said it a couple days ago in the midst of the George Floyd protests. A lot of people are passionate about equal rights for everybody. Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. All of it's in the forefront. Protests, soldiers, National Guard, tear gas, rubber bullets. They're still kneeling at some of the protests as a sign, and that's what Kaepernick started back in 2016. So it's still relevant today, and Drew Brees thought his insensitive comments were still relevant today, and his teammates, other players in the NFL, other players from different leagues, LeBron James, Malcolm Jenkins is a current teammate, former Philadelphia Eagles player.
He can come on back to Philly if we're being honest. We'll take Malcolm Jenkins
Malcolm
back.
Jenkins is a great player.
Come on back to the city of brotherly love.
Last year's top wide receiver out of New Orleans, Michael Thomas, the guy who got the ball 120 or 130 something times from Drew Brees in one season, spoke out against his teammate and said, hey man, we can't let this slide. So Drew Brees issued an apology through statement. He didn't come on camera, and a lot of players were like, well, why didn't you said it on camera, why can't you? Somebody said you need to get your ass in front of the camera. Tobias Harris from the 76ers, Drew Brees, he didn't accept his apology from the statement. Said you need to get your ass, quote, get your ass in front of the camera,
right,
to apologize. And I totally respect that, because you can have someone script your apology.
Certainly.
They have writers for that. That's what they pay. You get millions of dollars. You pay people for that. You have a press person. They can't hide your emotion on camera, because he could have been rolling his eyes when it was being written. We don't know. He could have been crying when it was written, but we will never know.
Right.
Because he went behind some kind of a statement. And I agree that he's got to show his face. And whoever's in my fantasy league will probably thank me for letting them have Drew Brees.
Right.
I will not be drafting Drew Brees for a fantasy league coming up. So,
do you want to know exactly what Vic Fangio said? Because I looked it up. I'm unfamiliar with this story. So his response to the George Floyd incident was, I think our problems in the NFL along those lines are minimal. We are a league of mediocrity. You earn what you get. You get what you earn. I don't see racism at all in the NFL. I don't see discrimination in the NFL. We all live together, joined as one for one common goal, and we intermingle and mix tremendously. If that was ever a fucking Trump word, why did he have to include that? God damn it. If society reflected an NFL team, we'd all be great.
And that's just all levels of wrong.
Because I agree.
Here, if they needed, if everything was utopian in the NFL, why do we have the Rooney Rule? The Rooney Rule, and the Rooney Rule's been tweaked again. And the Rooney Rule, for people who don't know, is a rule where when an NFL head coaching position pops open, they have to interview at least one African American male,
right,
or African American coach candidate. Whether they hire him or not, doesn't matter. You got to at least put in the work to make the attempt, because out of 32 teams, I can't imagine only maybe 5, 6.
Yeah, I think it was even less at that point in time. When Lovie Smith
at that time it was like 1 or 2.
Well, but when Lovie Smith was the coach of the Bears, I think there were less black head coaches in the NFL. Maybe Tony Dungy and Lovie Smith, and that might have been it. Don't quote me on that, but
Pretty close.
I'd bet a little bit of dough on that,
because I know that candidates came out after that, but I think currently in the NFL, I think we might be at 5 or 6, and I don't know the names of all of them. I remember some of the candidates. I know the Jets. I don't know the Jets head coach name. I believe he's black.
It doesn't matter.
I remember Leslie Frazier was one of those. Can't even say Lovie Smith anymore because he's with the University of Illinois.
Right.
Tony Dungy's at Arizona State.
Mm-hmm.
That Dungy? No, it's Herm Edwards.
Yeah, Herm Edwards. Herm Edwards gets hyped for Arizona State. You ever watch one of their games?
I love Herm Edwards.
What a
I loved him.
I loved
him in the pros. Still, I loved him in the pros. He's got some of the greatest quotes.
He's got moxie.
We play to win the game.
Yeah.
That's my guy. But anyway, we have to have the Rooney Rule because it's not a utopian league. There's still the belief that blacks aren't good at quarterback. There's still that belief. After all these years with Lamar Jackson, when he was drafted, they drafted I don't know how many quarterbacks ahead of him, and they said, "Hey, we'll draft you if you're going to play wide receiver. We don't believe you're going to be a quarterback." And what did this guy go out and do?
Quarterback.
This guy had the best record in the NFL, even though the team kind of flopped in the playoffs. I'm correct. Was he MVP? I know he was an MVP candidate because he had a great.
Yeah.
He had a great.
He had as many yards rushing as he did throwing.
No.
Didn't he?
No.
How many yards did he have rushing?
He had over 1,000 yards rushing and like 3,000 yards passing.
Really?
Yes. So he had like 32 touchdowns and like 5 interceptions for the year. And they're like, well, they were only 5-yard passes. Well, you're paid to get in the end zone. Did he get in the end zone? The answer is yes. So you can't tell me he wasn't a good quarterback. Anyway, but still we have the issue with black quarterbacks in the NFL. Yeah, I remember the stories with his name's on top of my name, the Redskins quarterback, Doug Williams. When they talk about Doug Williams playing quarterback with the Redskins coming in, leading into a Super Bowl. So we've had black quarterback issues, we got black coaching issues, but we have no problem letting blacks do running back, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, and defensive backs. Everywhere but quarterback and head coach. So that's you can't tell me that's a utopian society, because that mindset is still alive and well today, and it's very unfortunate because I think there's a lot of candidates out there. I think we had a lot of quarterbacks in the last draft. Jordan Love, if I'm correct. Is it Jordan Love? The quarterback the Packers took. He's black. We had the quarterback from Notre Dame was taken a few years ago. He just wasn't that good, and Chris would hate to hear me say that, but he's not that good.
Notre Dame sucks.
But we've had the look
Go
of
blue.
death.
Go blue.
But there's just quarterbacks who should be in the league. Like they even talked about, Michael Vick. He's not a good quarterback. He can just run. When have we had the last really great passing black quarterback that you can say, man, he was a great passing black quarterback, and for some reason you shouldn't have to, but you got to put black on it.
Randall Cunningham.
I was going Warren Moon or
Warren Moon. That dude threw the bullet.
Or Aaron McNair.
Aaron McNair was solid.
Aaron McNair was great until he was murdered.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
Too many baby mama.
Yeah,
that was it. He got killed by baby mama.
Yikes.
But anyway, when you look at who are the current African American quarterbacks in the league, like you look at Haskins out of Ohio State with
Go
with
Blue.
the Redskins.
Ohio State sucks.
Who else is in the league?
Man, you have plenty of them. The guy that was in New Orleans last year.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Teddy Bridgewater, starter in North Carolina now.
If he's not injury prone, look at how Cam Newton's done.
Cam Newton not picked up still.
Cam Newton will probably sit out until there's an injury. Cam Newton doesn't want to be a backup, and I don't blame him. Even though his statement said he'll be a backup, but Cam Newton is a former NFL MVP.
Right.
He's been to the Super Bowl. He's won a college championship. He's got the credentials, but he hasn't been given the tools. I think some other teams to succeed, and I feel like if he's in the right situation again, I think he can return to prominence.
What's the right situation for?
You got to have a halfway decent line. He doesn't need an all-star running back. He's never had great wide receivers except for Steve Smith his first couple years.
I mean,
and after that he's had shit.
I feel like even with an all-star running back, McCaffrey, man, they still didn't do well because he was injured.
Right,
he's injury prone.
He was injured. I don't know if he's injury prone. I just wonder.
He's injury.
The way that the rough way that he plays the game. Because Cam Newton's big. He feels like he can take some of these hits, and he ain't built for that.
Maybe he should be more like Lamar Jackson and get that juke going.
Everybody ain't built like Lamar Jackson.
That's right.
Can't.
So Cam Newton needs to get back in his lane.
Yeah. But anyway, the quality in the league.
Like that was a whole nother conversation.
It is. We're time limited, so I can't even jump into it.
You're right. Let's not.
So the equality that Ditko or Fangio was talking about, it doesn't exist. So I don't see what he's talking about. But all the backlash is what I really got super duper excited about. And I'm like, well, usually Drew Brees is someone is basically untouchable. When he's in the media, he's Mr. All-American. He's Captain America.
He's the golden boy.
Don't
call him Cap,
hey,
but he's the golden boy.
Whatever I can or can't call him, either way, okay, we'll call him the golden boy of the NFL. Because you really can't say anything bad about him.
Right.
Until now. But now when he said something that was against the grain, do you let it slide? Do you pull him aside? They jumped on his ass in social media almost immediately. Malcolm Jenkins was in tears with his response to his now teammate. Malcolm Jenkins was either, he wasn't traded. I believe he was just signed as a free agent
he was signed
for New Orleans.
Yeah.
And his first post was, Drew, you need to shut the fuck up. And
it's pretty simple.
I agree with him 1,000% when and I believe it was the insensitivity of the comment because he did not address. He says, I agree with the movement, but when you make it about he made it about the flag and made it about the soldiers and disrespect and his grandfathers. That's not the issue, man. You don't understand why people are doing what they're doing. If you just want to stay in your own little utopian home and wherever you live, that's fine, but that's not the real world.
Well, and it never was the issue, and that was the point, is that in whether it was 2016, 2017, whatever, that never was the issue. The flag was never the issue. The soldiers were never the issue. The issue was inequality and injustice against people of color. I find it difficult to believe that Drew Brees does not understand that being a quarterback in not only a predominantly black league, but
back city and state.
Yes, as well, being a quarterback, being a figurehead in a predominantly black city as well.
Yeah, I'm totally off him. I mean, I am disgusted with his statements. I was disgusted with him back in 2016 or 2017. Whenever he said that, I was disgusted back then because I understood the movement, and I'm disgusted. He basically said the exact same thing. So he's like, I believe the exact same thing then and now, but hey, I'm sorry my comments offended anyone who read or saw those. No, we don't want an apology. Your best apology is a change in action.
Right.
So he says that he can be a leader in this movement for Black Americans now. That he's a champion for equal rights. That ain't what you. That's what you should have said on Yahoo Finance, bro.
Yeah, certainly.
You don't come with grandfathers and flags and hearts and stuff when you got police kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes. That's not what we care about right now. And a couple of his teammates, Michael Thomas, told him that, bro, what you talking about? We don't care about. We don't care about that. We have an urgent issue of inequality and injustice in this country, and you want to worry about your grandfathers who probably, I don't know if they're still around, but if that's what you want to talk about, that's not urgent. Sorry, man.
So let me tell a story real quick, and I just want to get your take on this, because I feel like it correlates. So my brother's in the military, and I'm sure plenty of families across the United States have siblings, mothers, fathers, family in general that was in the military. But my brother in particular was in the military. My brother was very good at the military, to the point where he had his own platoon, he was a ranger, so on and so forth. He had his own team. And he got into it with one of my friends on Facebook, because one of my friends was kind of anti-establishment rhetoric and kind of down in the military while we're in Iraq, while we're in Afghanistan. My brother is overseas, and he was in Afghanistan at the time, and he said, hey man, like, what is the fucking deal with your friend? Like, I want to kick his ass when I see him. And I was like, look, man, like, I told him, unfortunately, I said, I couldn't let it, man, because it would not have been a fair fight, honestly. But I had to tell him, like, hey, man, you fight to defend both sides. Mm-hmm. The thing that makes America great is that we're free to feel the way we want to feel, have the opinions that we want to have, and it's unfortunately whether they're right or wrong, because whether it's right or wrong becomes a morality issue. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say that I necessarily agreed with the person that really got under my brother's skin, but unfortunately my brother defends the right for him to do so. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of military people, I don't know if you've seen this, but that's what a lot of military people have come out and said about people that don't necessarily agree with whatever forms of protest is going on around, not only around the United States, but around the world. Yep. Is that we fight for the opportunity, we fight to give people of our country and to enable them to have the right to protest in any way that they see fit. Now, it's unfortunate that it becomes violent when it does, but peaceful protest nonetheless, and gatherings and movements of power and people and numbers, there's nothing wrong with that. That is what our military fights for us to have the right to do, I feel like that really kind of talked him out of kicking my friend's ass. But
how close was this friend?
He's a pretty good friend. He's a pretty good friend with some pretty strong opinions. And you know what?
Sometimes people's strong opinions need to be popped in the mouth every now and then.
But you know what?
I need to be popped in the mouth every now and then.
Yeah, you know what? Who doesn't? But again, it was his right to do so. It's his right to have an opinion like that.
And it's your brother's right to pop him in the mouth.
Well, I mean, that's a freedom that my brother had, but I had to be like, look, man, like this is what you fight for.
It's been UFC 640.
It might have been one of them Tyson fights from the 90s, man, if we're being honest.
90-second fight. Probably not even that.
Yeah, it would have been really gross, and man, I can't afford to lose either one, so.
Here's the thing. We have to understand accountability and consequences.
Right.
So I agree with freedom of speech, and I agree, and I'm totally in favor of our military defending our freedoms overseas. and at home. But the issues, I mean, we're talking apples and oranges. That's the bottom line. We're talking apples and oranges when we talk about the injustices at home, defending and protesting the injustices at home, and then you have these military guys who are basically fighting for us to be safe at home, and I appreciate that 1,000%.
100%.
And I think that there's injustices here. It's been for I almost want to say centuries, but it's been so long that
it has been centuries. It's literally been 4 centuries.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
When our black minority military go fight our wars, and they come home and get treated like shit, how does that not piss somebody off?
Yeah.
And that major that should have been addressed back then, and it never was.
Right. Because
of the inequality issues that we've had in our country. So it'd be nice if we think that we're going to take a few steps toward this utopian United States that we've really wanted when we established in 1620, because it was the freedom of religion, freedom of blah, 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 but yet we had slaves that brought over and built everything. So it's the way that we were been thinking since we got over here. This woman in her 1619 report said that they left Europe because Europe was banning slavery.
Right.
So these people that came over here wanted to maintain slavery. Isn't that some shit?
Yeah.
So they wanted to maintain slavery. So the Europeans who had slaves, they didn't stay here. They sent them to other countries. They sent them away from their country. We kept ours. And we live with them. So we live with the pain that was caused back through all those years. We still talk about reparations and well, I wasn't around when my forefathers did A, B, C, and D. Well, we're still here and we have never dealt with that pain.
Right.
So that's still a whole nother thing that's not being talked about.
Right. So I guess I don't know if you have anything to add. I feel like we're at a point where we could probably start to wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make one analogy, and maybe it's not the right way to go about it, but just in listening to you talk, I think America is the self-proclaimed melting pot of the world, right? Self-proclaimed, because depending on who you ask, we might not be a melting pot. We might have, everybody might play a pivotal role in society, but certainly not a melting pot. And I just want to make this analogy, and this is going to be terrible, but stick with me. So, how do you get a good chili? You take different ingredients. You take the beans, you take the hamburger, you take the onions, you take the peppers, you take the powder, you take the tomatoes, you take the paste. I know it's delicious and I'm kind of hungry, but in order to make a good chili, you take a lot of ingredients. In order to make anything good, you take a lot of ingredients and you put them together, possibly in a pot if you're making chili, right? Mm-hmm. And possibly in the melting pot, right? And I'm not going to appropriate ingredients to different people because that's terrible and I would never ever do that, right? But
that'd definitely be racist.
Yeah, oh my gosh. But you take a lot of ingredients and you mix them into a pot. And then you let it cook, you let it simmer, you let it congeal, you let it all get together, you let it mix. If we really are going to be the self-proclaimed melting pot of the world, then the United States needs to understand how to make a good pot of chili. It takes all ingredients. It takes everything that goes into it to mix in order to become great in the end, in order to become tasty, delicious, a finished product in the end. And that's what we're missing.
See, now
we have all the ingredients, we just don't let it melt.
I got the devil's advocate on that, and that's because there's different types of chili.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious? We really gonna keep that white chicken chili versus that
Dude, white chicken chili is the shit.
It is the shit.
But anyway, yeah, right. That's a whole conversation on its own. So I love the analogy.